Captain Park Hyun walked through the long corridor of the Galactic Council flagship. His boots made soft sounds on the metal floor. The walls around him were covered with symbols from hundreds of different alien worlds. Each symbol told a story of conquest and surrender. Today they wanted to add Earth's symbol to that wall. Two tall guards walked beside him. They had blue skin and 4 arms each. Their weapons looked like they could burn a hole through a mountain. Park kept his hands, relaxed at his sides. He had been trained for this moment his entire life. The main council chamber was huge. Park had seen pictures of it before, but seeing it in person was different. The ceiling went up so high he could barely see the top. Seats were arranged in circles that went higher and higher like steps. In each seat sat a different kind of alien, being. Some looked like giant insects with clicking sounds coming from their mouths. Others had tentacles instead of arms and made gurgling noises when they spoke. There were beings made of what looked like living rock, and others that seemed to be made of pure energy contained in metal suits. At the center of all these seats was a single platform. This was where Park had to stand. This was where humans had to hear their fate. Ambassador Kretok of the Valdorian Empire stood up from the highest seat. He was 12 feet tall, with skin that looked like silver metal. His voice was deep and echoed through the chamber when he spoke. "Human representative," Kretok said, "you stand before the Galactic Council. We have ruled this galaxy for 10,000 years. We have brought peace to millions of worlds. We have stopped countless wars." Park nodded but said nothing. He had been told to listen first. "Your species has spread to 47 star systems in just 200 years. Kretok continued. "This expansion is too fast. It is dangerous. Other species took thousands of years to reach such numbers. You have done it in what we consider a short time." Another alien stood up. This one looked like a giant spider, but with a face that was almost human. "Humans fight too much," it said in a voice that sounded like wind through leaves. "Every world you settle has conflicts. Every colony has wars. This brings chaos to our peaceful galaxy." A third voice joined in. This came from a being that looked like a cloud of gas held together by some kind of energy field. "Your technology develops too quickly. You create new weapons when you should be creating art. You build warships when you should be building gardens. This is not the way of civilized beings." Park listened to all of this. He had heard these complaints before. The Council had been watching humanity for 50 years. They had sent messages of concern. They had demanded meetings. They had asked for limits on human expansion. Earth had always been polite, but had never agreed to stop growing. Kretok raised one of his 4 hands. The chamber became quiet. "The Galactic Council has made a decision about humanity," he said. "This decision is final. There will be no discussion. There will be no negotiation." Park felt his heart beat faster, but his face stayed calm. He had trained for this moment. "Humanity will surrender all military vessels to Council forces," Kretok announced. "All human colonies outside the Sol system will be placed under Council administration. 80% of Earth's population will be relocated to designated work worlds where they can be properly supervised." The chamber was completely silent now. Every alien being was watching Park's face to see his reaction. "Human military technology will be studied and then destroyed," Kretok continued. "All human research into advanced weapons will stop immediately. Humans will be allowed to keep basic technology for farming and simple manufacturing, but nothing that could be used for war." Park's hand stayed at his sides. His breathing remained steady. "Humans who cooperate with this transition will be treated well," the Valdorian ambassador said. "Those who resist will be dealt with according to Council law. We have prepared comfortable facilities on 17 different worlds where humans can live and work under proper guidance." Another alien spoke up. This one looked like a massive turtle but walked on 2 legs. "This is generous," it said. "Most species that expand too quickly are simply eliminated. We are offering humans a chance to live if they accept their place in the galactic order." "The Council's combined fleet consists of 50,000 warships," Kretok said. "These ships carry weapons that can destroy entire planets. Humanity has perhaps 2,000 ships. The choice should be obvious to any intelligent being." Park finally spoke. "Is that all?" he asked. The question seemed to surprise many of the aliens. They had expected fear or anger or pleading. They had not expected such a calm response. "You have 72 standard hours to deliver Earth's surrender," Kretok said. "After that time, our fleet will move to Sol System and enforce these terms. We hope this will not be necessary." Park looked around the chamber. He made eye contact with as many aliens as he could. Then something happened that none of them expected. Park began to laugh. It started as a small chuckle but grew louder. Soon, his laughter was echoing through the huge chamber just like Kretok's voice had done. The sound bounced off the walls and came back even louder. The aliens looked at each other in confusion. Some made angry sounds. Others seemed frightened by this unexpected reaction. Park laughed for a full minute before he stopped. When he finally became quiet, the chamber was dead silent again. "Did we say something amusing?" Kretok asked. His voice now had an edge of anger in it. "Oh, yes," Park said. "Very amusing. You see, I was told this might happen. My government prepared me for exactly this conversation." "Then you understand the seriousness of our demands?" "I understand perfectly," Park said. He reached for a small device on his belt. Several aliens reached for their weapons, but Park moved slowly to show he meant no harm. "I need to send a message to Earth." "What message?" Kretok demanded. Park activated the device. It sent a signal that would reach Earth in just a few seconds through quantum communication technology. The message was only one word, but Park spoke it out loud so everyone in the chamber could hear. "Proceed," he said into the device. Then he put the device away and looked back at Kretok. 72 hours, you said?" "Yes." "Earth will have its answer ready by then," Park said. "I think you're going to find it very interesting." The confidence in Park's voice made many of the aliens uncomfortable. They had expected fear and begging. Instead, they got laughter and confidence. "You may return to your ship," Kretok said. "Use your time wisely. Convince your people to accept our generous offer." Park smiled. "Oh, I will definitely tell them everything you said here today. Every single word." As Park walked out of the chamber, the aliens began talking among themselves in dozens of different languages. None of them understood why the humans seemed so calm. None of them understood why he had laughed at their ultimatum. They would understand soon enough. President Kim Subin stood in the Oval Office looking out at the gardens of the presidential palace. The cherry trees were blooming and their pink flowers moved gently in the spring breeze. In a few hours, she would address not just Earth, but every human colony across the galaxy. The message Captain Park had sent from the council ship was exactly what they had expected. Her aide knocked on the door and entered. "Madam President, the broadcast equipment is ready. The entire communication network is standing by." Kim nodded. "How long until Captain Park's message reaches all our colonies?" 17 minutes for the farthest settlements," the aide replied. "Everyone will receive it at the same time." Kim walked to her desk where a folder marked Terra Defense Protocol waited for her. Inside were plans that had been decades in the making. Plans that very few people knew about. Plans that would change everything. The door opened again, and Dr. Lee Dong-min entered. He was the head of the Terra Defense Initiative and one of the few people who knew humanity's true capabilities. His face was calm, but Kim could see excitement in his eyes. "The quantum tunnel networks are all active," Dr. Lee reported. "Every hidden installation has confirmed ready status. Ghost Protocol is fully operational." Kim smiled. "And our friends in council space?" "All contacts confirmed. The resistance movements are ready to move when we give the signal. They've been waiting for this day for 20 years. 20 years ago, humanity had made first contact with several species that were under council rule. These species had reached out secretly asking for help. They were tired of being controlled by the council's iron grip. Humanity had spent 2 decades carefully building relationships with these groups and providing them with advanced technology. Admiral Choi Min-ho's voice came through the intercom. "Madam President, all fleet commanders are standing by. The sleeper fleets report full readiness." The sleeper fleets were humanity's greatest secret. While the Council thought Earth had 2,000 ships, the real number was closer to 20,000. Most of these ships had been built in hidden facilities in asteroid belts and nebulae far from any Council patrols. They had been waiting in dark space for years, just for this moment. "How many Council ships are moving towards Sol?" Kim asked. 53,000 confirmed, Admiral Choi replied. "They're gathering ships from across the galaxy. It's the largest fleet ever assembled." Kim felt a moment of sadness. So many beings were about to learn that their leaders had lied to them about humanity. So many would discover that the galaxy was not what they thought it was. She walked to the broadcast studio that had been set up in the palace. Cameras were ready to transmit her words to every human settlement in the galaxy. Translation programs would convert her speech into hundreds of languages for alien species who were secretly listening. "We're live in 30 seconds, the broadcast director said. Kim stood behind the podium and looked directly into the main camera. Behind her was a large window showing the gardens and the city beyond. She wanted people to see Earth in all its beauty. She wanted them to remember what they were protecting. The red light on the camera came on. "My fellow humans," Kim began. "Today, the Galactic Council delivered an ultimatum to Earth. They demand our surrender. They want us to give up our freedom and accept their rule. They believe we are too dangerous to remain independent." She paused to let her words sink in. "The Council thinks we are weak because we are new to space. They think we are few because they have only seen our public colonies. They think we are unprepared because we have shown them only what we wanted them to see." Kim's voice became stronger. "For 50 years, we have known this day would come. The Council does not tolerate independence. They do not allow species to grow strong. Every civilization that has ever challenged them has been crushed or absorbed." She looked directly into the camera. "But we are not every other civilization. We are human. And humans do not surrender to bullies. Across the galaxy, in hidden facilities and secret bases, humans watch their president's words. In underground bunkers on Council worlds, oppressed alien species gathered around illegal receivers to hear what Earth would say. The Council's ambassadors were surprised when Captain Park laughed at their ultimatum," Kim continued. "They should not have been. We have been preparing for this moment since the day we first learned of their existence." Dr. Lee sat in the control room watching as quantum signals activated systems that had been dormant for years. Across hundreds of star systems, hidden installations came online. Ships that had been powered down in asteroid belts began warming their engines. Weapons that had been stored in dark matter streams started charging their power cells. "The Council believes they rule through strength," Kim said. "They point to their 50,000 ships and think this makes them invincible. What they do not understand is that true strength comes not from the size of your fleet, but from the cause you fight for." On the edge of the Sol system, the first Council scout ships were already arriving. Their sensors showed exactly what they expected to see. Earth with its normal defense platforms, the asteroid belt with its mining stations, the outer planets with their research facilities. Everything looked exactly as it had for decades. The scouts did not notice that some of the asteroids were moving in patterns that were slightly too regular. They did not detect the energy signatures that were carefully hidden inside those mining stations. Their sensors could not penetrate the cloaking technology that humanity had been perfecting for 20 years. "To our friends among the Council, species who are listening to this broadcast," Kim said, "your time of freedom is coming. We have not forgotten our promises to you. We have not forgotten our shared dream of a galaxy where every species can determine its own destiny." In the deepest levels of the Terra Defense Command Center, Admiral Choi was coordinating with fleet commanders across the galaxy. Each commander had been chosen not just for their military skill, but for their understanding of what humanity was really fighting for. "Freedom is not something that can be given," Kim continued. "It must be taken. It must be defended. And when necessary, it must be fought for. The Council has ruled this galaxy for 10,000 years, but their rule ends now." She paused, and when she spoke again, her voice carried the weight of absolute certainty. "In 72 hours, the Council fleet will arrive at Earth expecting our surrender. Instead, they will learn what happens when predators try to corner their prey. They will discover that humanity did not crawl out of the darkness of space to bow down to anyone." The broadcast reached the farthest human colonies and continued spreading to hidden receivers throughout Council space. Resistance leaders who had waited decades for this moment began activating their own networks. "We did not come to the stars to be servants," Kim said. "We came to be free, and we will remain free no matter the cost." She looked one last time into the camera. To every human watching this broadcast, remember that our ancestors faced impossible odds before and won. Remember that we carry within us the strength of every generation that refused to give up. Remember that we are the children of Earth, and Earth does not surrender. The red light on the camera went dark. The broadcast was over. Dr. Lee's voice came through the intercom. "Ghost Protocol is now fully active. Every hidden asset is online and ready," Admiral Choi added. "All fleet commanders report ready status. We can begin operations on your order." Kim looked out the window at the cherry trees one more time. In 72 hours, this peaceful scene might be gone. But if it was destroyed, it would not be because humanity went quietly into slavery. "Give the order," she said. "Let them come." Lieutenant Commander Jang Soo-min floated in the pilot seat of her stealth corvette Silent Thunder. Around her, the ship was completely dark and silent. Every system was running on minimum power to avoid detection. She had been waiting in this position for 6 hours, watching the Council fleet approach Earth. Through her view screen, she could see thousands of alien warships moving in perfect formation toward the Sol system. The largest ships were the size of small cities. Their weapons could crack planets in half. Their shields could stop anything humanity was supposed to have. "All Ghost units, this is command," came the voice through her encrypted communicator. "Council fleet has entered outer detection range. Begin final approach to your assigned positions." Soo-min activated her ship's quantum drive. The Silent Thunder slipped through space using technology that bent reality around it. To any sensors watching, she simply did not exist. Behind her, 49 other stealth ships moved into position around the massive Council formation. Admiral Kretok stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching Earth grow larger on his screens. The planet looked peaceful and defenseless. Its few orbital platforms were exactly where his intelligence reports said they would be. The human fleet was gathered near the moon just as expected. "Sir," his sensor officer reported, "we are detecting exactly 2,300 human vessels. They appear to be in defensive formation around their homeworld." Kretok nodded. This matched everything the Council knew about human military strength. It would be a quick battle. Perhaps the humans would surrender when they saw how outmatched they were. "Any signs of advanced defensive systems?" Kretok asked. "Negative, sir. Standard orbital platforms only. Their technology appears to be exactly what our reports indicated. What the sensors did not show was that every asteroid in the belt had been carefully hollowed out and filled with weapon systems. What they could not detect were the massive shipyards hidden inside the gas giants. What they missed completely was that Earth's moon was not a natural satellite at all. On the bridge of Earth, Defense Command Admiral Choi Min-ho watched the Council fleet approach. Beside him, Dr. Lee monitored the hidden systems that were about to reveal themselves. "Distance to target?" Admiral Choi asked. 4 million kilometers and closing," came the reply. "All hidden assets report ready status." "Sir," another officer said, "we're receiving surrender demands from the Council flagship." Admiral Choi smiled. "Tell them we'll give our answer in person." In space around the Sol system, things that had looked like ordinary rocks for decades began to unfold. Asteroid mining stations revealed themselves to be weapons platforms. Research facilities on the outer planets opened to release squadrons of fighters, and Earth's moon began to change. The lunar surface split open along lines that had been invisible until now. Massive sections of rock moved aside to reveal the most powerful weapons humanity had ever built. The moon was not just a base. It was a fortress that had been under construction for 50 years. Kretok stared at his screens in disbelief. "What is happening?" he demanded. "Sir, the entire system is activating defense systems we never detected," his sensor officer replied. "Power readings are off our scales." "How many ships are we now detecting?" The officer's voice was shaky. "Sir, we're reading over 15,000 human vessels, and the number is still climbing." But the real shock came when Lieutenant Commander Jang Soo-min and her Ghost fleet materialized directly inside the Council formation. 50 ships appeared from nowhere in the middle of thousands of alien vessels. The humans had somehow traveled through space without being detected, and now they were in perfect position to strike. "All Council ships, this is Lieutenant Commander Jang of the Earth Defense Force," Sumin broadcast on all frequencies. "You are surrounded and outgunned. Prepare to receive our terms for your surrender." The Council bridge crews scrambled to respond, but their formations were in chaos. Human ships that should not exist were appearing everywhere. Weapons they had never seen before were targeting their most important vessels. Sumin's ship fired a single quantum torpedo at the Council flagship. The weapon passed through Kreetak's shields as if they were not there and struck the ship's main communication array. The explosion was precise and controlled, but it sent a clear message. "Impossible," Kreetak said. "Our shields can stop anything." "Not quantum weapons," his science officer replied. "These weapons exist in multiple dimensions at once. Our shields only protect against attacks in normal space." All around the Council fleet, human ships were demonstrating technology that should not exist. Some ships seemed to be in several places at the same time. Others fired weapons that ignored distance and struck targets instantly. A few seemed to be made of pure energy rather than metal and could pass through solid matter. Dr. Lee's voice came through the communication systems of every Council ship. "Council forces, this is Dr. Lee Dong-min of the Terra Defense Initiative. You are experiencing humanity's true technological capabilities. What you see now is what we have been building while you thought we were primitive newcomers to space." On Kreetak's bridge, alarms were sounding everywhere. "Status report," he ordered. "Sir, we've lost communication with 60% of our fleet. Human ships are using some kind of jamming technology we can't counter. Our weapons are having no effect on their shields. And, sir, they're not trying to destroy us." That last part was what made this most frightening. The humans were clearly winning, but they were not killing anyone. Instead, they were disabling ships and capturing key vessels. They were fighting like they had done this many times before. "Admiral, this is Captain Park Hyun," came a familiar voice. "I'm currently aboard the human dreadnought Invictus. I believe we met recently." Kreetak recognized the human who had laughed at the Council's ultimatum. "Captain Park, what is the meaning of this attack?" "This is not an attack," Park replied. "This is a demonstration. We wanted to show you what a real military force looks like before we discuss new terms for this galaxy." Around the Sol system, the battle was already over. Council ships found themselves surrounded by human vessels that had appeared from nowhere. Their weapons were useless against human shields. Their communications were blocked by human jamming. Most importantly, their leaders were being systematically captured by human boarding parties. "How is this possible?" Kreetak asked. "Our intelligence said you had 2,000 ships." "Your intelligence was exactly what we wanted it to be," Park replied. "For 50 years we've been showing you only what served our purposes. Every piece of information you gathered about humanity was carefully selected to make you underestimate us." Sumin's voice joined the conversation. "While you were building an empire, we were building a network. Every species you oppressed became our ally. Every world you conquered gave us intelligence about your weaknesses. You thought you were ruling the galaxy, but you were actually surrounded by enemies." The truth was becoming clear to the Council commanders. Humanity had not been expanding randomly across the galaxy. They had been carefully positioning themselves in every major system. They had been building relationships with oppressed species. They had been preparing for this exact moment for decades. "What do you want?" Kreetak asked. "We want what every intelligent being wants," Park replied. "Freedom. The right to determine our own destiny. The chance to build something better than an empire based on fear." Dr. Lee's voice returned. "Admiral, we're sending you data files that detail the true history of Council rule. You might want to review what your leaders have really been doing for the past 10,000 years. The files that appeared on Council screens showed records of species that had been wiped out for refusing to surrender. They showed entire civilizations that had been enslaved. They showed the systematic destruction of any group that dared to develop technology that might threaten Council supremacy. Your Council does not bring peace," Park said. "It brings oppression. Well, that ends today." The battle for the Sol system was over before it had really begun. The mighty Council fleet that was supposed to force humanity's surrender had instead learned that they were the ones who needed to surrender. But this was just the beginning. Across the galaxy, other human fleets were revealing themselves at Council. Strongholds. The species that thought they had given humanity an ultimatum were about to discover that they were the ones who had been conquered. General Yoon Tae-jun stood on the bridge of the human battleship Liberation, watching as the Valdorian home fleet surrendered without firing a shot. Around the planet, Valdoria Prime, dozens of Council warships were powering down their weapons and opening their docking bays to human inspection teams. "Sir," his communications officer reported, "the planetary governor is requesting permission to speak with you directly." Yoon nodded. This was happening across the galaxy now. Council worlds that had seemed so powerful just days ago were falling to humanity faster than anyone had expected, not because humans were destroying them, but because their own people were rising up to join the human cause. The view screen activated and Governor Veltar appeared. He was a massive Valdorian with silver skin and 4 arms, but his usual arrogance was gone. Instead, he looked tired and defeated. "General Yoon," Veltar said, "I understand you have demands to make." "I have an offer to make," Yoon corrected. "Your world can choose its own path forward. You can join the new Galactic Federation we're building, or you can remain independent. What you cannot do is continue oppressing other species." Veltar looked confused. "You're not here to conquer us?" "We're here to free everyone," Yoon replied, "including your own people." On the planet below, Colonel Han So-young was meeting with Valdorian resistance leaders who had been working secretly with humanity for years. These Valdorians were tired of their government's endless wars and harsh rule. They wanted change just as much as the species their empire had conquered. "The weapon shipments you promised us are ready?" asked Commander Zithra, a young Valdorian, who had been organizing underground groups for a decade. "More than ready," Colonel Han replied. "But honestly, you might not need them. Your government is collapsing faster than we expected." It was true. Across Valdorian space, entire fleets were surrendering to human forces, not because they were defeated in battle, but because their crews no longer believed in what they were fighting for. When humanity showed them proof of what their leaders had really been doing for thousands of years, many Valdorian soldiers simply laid down their weapons. "The Council told us we were bringing civilization to primitive worlds," Zithra said. "They said the species we conquered were grateful for our guidance." Colonel Han showed her a datapad with reports from former Council colonies. "These are testimonies from beings who lived under Valdorian rule. I think you'll find the truth is very different from what your leaders told you." As Zithra read the reports, her expression changed from confusion to horror to anger. The stories told of families separated, children taken from parents, entire cultures destroyed in the name of bringing order to chaos. "How long have you known about this?" she asked. "Humanity has been gathering this evidence for 30 years, Colonel Han replied. "Every species that joined our alliance brought their own stories. Every world we liberated gave us more proof of Council crimes." On the bridge of the Liberation, General Yoon was receiving reports from human commanders across the galaxy. The news was almost too good to believe. "Sir," his intelligence officer said, "the Thrakari Empire has voted to dissolve itself. Their Senate is asking to join our Federation. The Kristen Collective is requesting human advisors to help them establish democratic government," added another officer. "And sir, the insectoid hives are offering to share their biotechnology in exchange for protection from any remaining Council forces." Yoon smiled. This was exactly what humanity had hoped for, but faster than they had dared to expect. Species that had been enemies for thousands of years were coming together because they all wanted the same thing: freedom from Council oppression. Dr. Beijin Wu's voice came through the communication system. He was humanity's chief expert on alien psychology and had been working with resistance movements for decades. "General, the psychological profiles we developed are proving accurate," Dr. Bei reported. "Most Council species joined the Empire because they were forced to, not because they believed in it. When given a real choice, they're choosing freedom." "What about the species that are still loyal to the Council?" Yoon asked. "There are very few of them, sir. Maybe 6 or 7 worlds out of thousands. And even on those worlds, we're seeing internal resistance movements." The truth was that the Council had never been as unified as it appeared. The Empire had been held together by fear and force, not by shared beliefs or common goals. When humanity showed that the Council could be defeated, that fear disappeared and the Empire began falling apart on its own. In Council space, Captain Park Hyun was aboard a transport ship visiting worlds that had just declared independence. His job was to help them transition from Council rule to self-government. It was harder work than fighting battles, but much more rewarding. On the planet Zerion Prime, he met with a group of former council administrators who were trying to figure out how to run their world without orders from above. "We've been following council directives for 3,000 years, said Administrator Quellen, a being that looked like a walking tree with glowing eyes. "We don't know how to make decisions for ourselves." "You'll learn," Park assured him. "Every species does. Democracy isn't easy, but it's worth the effort." "But what if we make mistakes?" Quellen asked. "What if our choices lead to problems?" "Then you'll fix the problems and make better choices next time," Park replied. "That's how freedom works. You have the right to make mistakes as long as you also have the responsibility to learn from them." Park's personal communicator activated and Admiral Choi's voice came through. "Captain, we're receiving surrender requests from the last 3 council strongholds. It looks like organized resistance is over." "Any word from the council leadership?" Park asked. "They're requesting a meeting. Full diplomatic immunity and neutral location. They want to discuss terms." Park looked out at the Zerion city below, where beings of a dozen different species were working together to build something new. Children who had never known freedom were playing in parks that had been restricted to council officials just days ago. "Tell them we'll meet," Park said. "But the terms are non-negotiable. The age of the council is over." Across the galaxy, the transformation was happening faster than anyone had believed possible. Worlds that had been under council control for millennia were declaring independence. Species that had been enemies were forming alliances. Technology that had been restricted to council elites was being shared freely. On Earth, President Kim Subin was coordinating with leaders from hundreds of different species. Her office had become the center of a new kind of government that had never existed before. A true galactic democracy where every voice mattered. "Madam President," her aide announced, "we have confirmation that all major council military assets have been neutralized or have joined our alliance. The war is effectively over." Kim nodded, but she didn't celebrate yet. Winning the war had been the easy part. Building a lasting peace would be much harder. "What's the status of the refugee crisis?" she asked. "Better than expected," Dr. Lee reported through the communication system. "Most displaced populations are choosing to return to their homeworlds now that they're free. The few who want to relocate are finding welcome on colony worlds that need more people." "And the council leadership?" "Still in hiding, but their support. Base has completely collapsed. Most of their former allies are actively hunting them now." The galaxy that humanity had entered just 2 centuries ago as newcomers was transforming into something entirely different. The rigid hierarchy that had existed for 10,000 years was being replaced by a loose federation of free worlds. It had taken 3 days to defeat an empire that had ruled for 10 millennia. It would take much longer to build something better. In its place, but humanity and their allies were ready for that challenge. The age of the Galactic Council was ending. The age of galactic freedom was just beginning. Ambassador Shin Hee-jin walked through the same corridor where Captain Park had been escorted 6 months earlier. But everything was different now. The walls that had once displayed symbols of conquest now showed artwork from thousands of free worlds. The guards who had carried weapons of intimidation now wore ceremonial uniforms and served as guides for visiting diplomats. The Great Council chamber had been completely transformed. Instead of seats arranged to show hierarchy and dominance, the new layout put everyone at the same level. Representatives from over 10,000 species sat in circles that promoted discussion rather than speeches from above. At the center where Park had once stood alone as humanity received its ultimatum, there was now a simple podium where any being could speak. Today, Shin would stand there to formally close the old Galactic Council and open the new Galactic Federation. Former Admiral Kreetok sat in the audience wearing simple civilian clothes. His empire was gone, but he was still alive and free to participate in the new government. This had surprised him more than anything else about humanity. They had defeated the council completely, but they had not sought revenge. "The tribunal hearings are complete," Dr. Beijin-Wu reported to Shin as she prepared for the ceremony. "Most former council leaders have accepted exile to colony worlds where they can live peacefully. A few chose to serve community sentences, helping rebuild worlds they damaged. None chose execution even though it was offered as an option." Shin nodded. Humanity had insisted that even the worst council leaders be given choices about their fate. Some alien species had wanted executions or imprisonment, But humans had argued for rehabilitation instead. It was a harder path, but a better one. "What about the war crimes tribunals?" Shin asked. "Complete, sir. The evidence was overwhelming, but the sentences focused on making things right rather than punishment. Former council officials are working to rebuild schools on worlds where they destroyed education systems. Military leaders are helping establish planetary defense forces on worlds they once oppressed." The approach had been controversial at first. Many species wanted harsh revenge for thousands of years of oppression, but humanity had convinced them that building a better future was more important than punishing the past. Captain Park, now Admiral. Park stood near the podium, reviewing his notes for the presentation he would give after Shin's speech. His job was to explain how the new Federation would work, and how it would be different from the council that had come before. "Admiral," came a voice behind him. Park turned to see Kretok approaching. The former Valdorian leader looked older, and more tired than he had during their first meeting, but there was something else in his expression now. Something that might have been hope. "Ambassador Kretok," Park said formally, but without hostility. "I wanted to thank you," Kretok said, "not for defeating us, but for what came after. My world was dying under the weight of empire. Our people were becoming something ugly and cruel. You gave us a chance to remember who we used to be," Park smiled. "Every species deserves that chance. Even humans needed it once. We were heading down a dark path before we learned to work together instead of fighting each other." "The reports from Valdoria Prime are encouraging," Kretok continued. "Young Valdorians are learning about art and science instead of war. They're building schools instead of weapons factories. It will take generations to heal, but the healing has begun." This conversation was happening across the galaxy. Former enemies were becoming allies. Species that had fought for millennia were learning to cooperate. It was not easy, and there were still conflicts, but there was progress. Ambassador Shin stepped up to the podium, and the great chamber became quiet. Representatives from thousands of worlds looked toward her expectantly. Many had never imagined they would see this day. 6 months ago, the Galactic Council ordered humanity to surrender, Shin began. Today, we gather to close that council forever and open something new in its place. Applause filled the chamber. Not the polite acknowledgement that had once been required, but genuine enthusiasm from beings who had found hope again. "The old council ruled through fear and force," Shin continued. "They told you that peace required submission and that order required oppression. They were wrong." She gestured toward the audience where former enemies sat side by side. "True peace comes from justice. Real order comes from cooperation. The Federation we are building today will be based on these principles." Admiral Park had helped design the new government structure during months of negotiations with representatives from every member species. It was complicated, because it had to balance the needs of thousands of different civilizations, but it was also simple because it was based on one core idea. Every being had the right to determine their own fate. "The Federation Council will have no permanent members and no hierarchy," Shin explained. "Leadership will rotate among all member worlds. Decisions will be made by consensus whenever possible and by majority vote when consensus cannot be reached." "What about military forces?" called out a representative from the Crystalline Collective. "Each world will maintain its own defense forces," Admiral Park answered as he joined Shin at the podium. "The Federation will coordinate mutual defense when requested, but no world will be required to fight in conflicts that do not directly threaten them." This had been one of the hardest negotiations. Many species wanted a strong central military to prevent the chaos that might follow the Council's collapse. Others feared that any central force would eventually become oppressive like the Council had been. The compromise was a network of mutual defense agreements backed by rapid response, fleets that could assist any world under attack. Humanity would contribute significantly to these fleets, but they would be commanded by rotating councils rather than permanent admirals. "The Federation will have no capital world," Shin continued. "Council meetings will rotate among member systems, so that no single planet becomes more important than others." A representative from the insectoid hives spoke up. "How will you prevent the Federation from becoming another empire?" It was the question everyone was thinking, but few dared to ask. Every galactic government in history had eventually become tyrannical. What would make this one different? "By designing it to be weak," Admiral Park replied. The old council was strong and used that strength to oppress others. The Federation will have just enough power to coordinate mutual aid and defense, but not enough to control member worlds. Dr. Bay's research had shown that successful democracies required careful limits on government power. The Federation Constitution included multiple safeguards to prevent any group from gaining too much control. Any member world can leave the Federation at any time, Shin added. No one will be forced to remain. No one will be punished for choosing independence. This was perhaps the most radical idea of all. The Council had never allowed anyone to leave. The Federation would actively protect the right of members to go their own way. What about species that choose not to join? Asked another representative. They will be left alone, Park answered. The Federation will not expand through conquest or coercion. We will welcome new members, but we will not force anyone to join. Several dozen worlds had chosen to remain completely independent, and the Federation was honoring that choice. Some might join later as they saw how the new system worked. Others might remain separate forever, and that was acceptable too. President Kim Soo-bin's voice came through the communication system from Earth. The final constitutional ratification votes are complete. The Galactic Federation is officially established. Cheers erupted throughout the chamber. Beings who had spent their entire lives under authoritarian rule were celebrating the birth of something they had never dared to hope for. But Shin raised her hand for quiet. There was one more thing that needed to be said. The Federation begins today, but it will be tested many times, she said. There will be conflicts between member worlds. There will be species that try to dominate others. There will be moments when it seems easier to return to the old ways of empire and oppression. She looked around the chamber, making eye contact, with as many representatives as possible. When those moments come, remember what we have learned. Remember that the strong should protect the weak, not rule them. Remember that diversity makes us stronger, not weaker. Remember that freedom is worth defending even when that defense is difficult. Admiral Park stepped forward one last time. The Galactic Council ordered humanity to surrender, he said. Earth laughed. Not because we thought war was funny, but because we knew something the Council had forgotten. Free people do not surrender to tyrants. Free people fight back, and when they fight back together, they always win. The ceremony was over, but the work was just beginning. Representatives would return to their worlds to begin the long process of building democratic institutions. Former Council military officers would help establish planetary defense forces. Scientists would share knowledge that had been restricted for millennia. It would take decades to fully heal the damage done by 10,000 years of authoritarian rule. There would be setbacks and failures. Some worlds might abandon democracy and return to older forms of government. But for the first time in galactic history, every being had the chance to choose their own path.